This webinar, One Book Wyoming and the GoWYLD resources. The One Book Wyoming program features the novella Spirit of Steamboat by Craig Johnson. Libraries across Wyoming will host events such as book discussions all year long. In this webinar, we will highlight some of the topics and great sources in GoWYLD.net. Well, hello, Steamboat. We've created a LibGuide here at the State Library on One Book Wyoming. On this LibGuide, you'll find a link to One Book Wyoming, which gives information about the book, a video with Craig Johnson, the author, as well as some graphics that you can use. Here on the LibGuide, as we scroll down, there's the link to One Book Wyoming. We've also included Sweetwater County's One Book Wyoming blog, Craig Johnson's website and Facebook page. Below that, some discussion topics and the link to GoWYLD, followed by some of our GoWYLD.net resources and some suggestions. Below that, you'll find what's happening around the state, and we'd love to have you submit your happenings to us here at the State Library. And below that, just a link called Other Stuff, and we'll come back to that here at the end. But let's go out to GoWYLD.net and take a look at some of our sources. An obvious topic, of course, is history. We have a link here, a subject link to history, or I can go up to the alphabetic list and select my particular resource or database. I'm going to start with History Reference Center. This is the basic search screen for History Reference Center, but if you go to Advanced Search, you'll find a limiter called Timeline. If you scroll down, you can see that you can select different periods in time, including World War II. So I've selected World War II, and I'm going to come up and click on Search. This lets someone come in, find information about World War II, without having to know search terms ahead of time. You can scroll through all of your items or limit those. On the left-hand side, you'll see that we have source types, we have subject, and we have publication. All of these that we can narrow our search to. So I'm going to do some limiting here. On the left, I'm going to click on Reference Books. Notice it updates my search and takes me into things like the CIA World Factbook, Columbia Electronic Encyclopedia. I can also change that. Notice on the left there's also Biographies. And we have more than one page. So there's Dwight Eisenhower, Winston Churchill. I can take Biographies off, and I can do a Show More. Here you'll find primary source documents, biographies, reference books, and notice the number of hits for each one of those. And that was just here on Ebsco on the timeline under World War II. At the bottom of each Ebsco page, there's a link called Ebsco Support Site. If you go onto this site and go into their promotional tools, and then select this particular database, History Reference Center, there in the middle, you'll see that it gives you some webinars, tutorials, and things, but here in the middle is a World War II poster. Also on that page was a scavenger hunt for History Reference Center that might be of use and fun for folks to do during this session. So here's a poster on World War II and History Reference Center, and you can put your library and GoWYLD.net there before you print those off. The next resource we're going to look at in history is one called History Study Center. In History Study Center, you'll see that you have study units, a link to historical documents, maps, and reference, a multimedia link, and journal article link. I'm going to start here in multimedia. And I'm going to put in some search terms. I can do images and video, or just video if I want. And here's a video. Second World War Japanese internment as recalled in 1984 in an interview with a Japanese American congressman.
Vividly watching my dad cry, because I've only seen him cry 3 times in his life.
So that's a great piece to add to your discussions, and background information are some of these video clips of different cultures and different times during history. The study units, you can search a keyword or select by a main topic, and I'm going to select wars and conflicts. Here, the Second World War. And America during the Second World War, 1941 to 1945. In this study guide, you'll see some basic information to begin, followed by some link to some highlight information. There's also links to biographies and maps, primary source documents, a selection of images and videos. One of the videos I'd like to show is on the code talkers here.
For military service or join the shifts of workers at defense plants. Most remarkable is the contribution of a small elite corps known as the Code Talkers.
I'm going to go back to our study unit here. In addition to all of that information, there are also lists of articles and related study units, as well as some web links. So a lot of information pulled together within this study unit on a piece of World War II. The next one I want to look at is one of our in-context resources. I can find it here alphabetically, or they're listed here under history. I'm going to go to U.S. History in Context. Here you can find information by categories or do a search. I'm going to use the events, decades, and cultural trends. Notice in the in context they always have 3 items under each category, but just go across to the right and click on View All, and I'm going to select the 1940s. Here you'll find reference materials, primary source documents, magazine and academic journal articles, if available, links to images and videos. You'll see the images collection over here on the right hand side. One of the things I wanted to point out under featured content in this topic, and that's Executive Order 9066. Here's some information about it. February 19th, 1942 by Franklin D. Roosevelt. And if you scroll down, it gives some information that President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which authorized the relocation of individuals of Japanese descent from the West Coast. Another piece and great resource to add to your discussions following this book. New to our suite of databases is the Smithsonian Collections Online. This collection includes Air and Space Magazine and Smithsonian Magazine. I'm going to do a search on the Doolittle Raiders. Here it lists some magazine articles. And I'm going to look at a couple of these. Great pictures in them. The first one is Raiders Remembered from the Air and Space Magazine. This one's a great article because it not only gives information about the Doolittle Raiders, but it also shows the inside of the B-25. And since a lot of that story takes place inside that B-25, this is great to have those images to go along with it. The other piece on these pictures that I think is so great, besides those faces, is the jacket and how it highlights the jacket, which also has a role in the story. On the right, you can go back to your search results, and I'm going to select Tokyo Bombed. This one has a great image of those planes taking off from the USS Hornet, which is also talked about in the story. Another topic that you might want to pursue in these discussions about the book, and that's the culture and language. A couple of resources that might be of interest in that category, those categories, is Culturegrams. In Culturegrams, you can learn about countries around the world, states, provinces. There's a Kids in a World edition, depending on what audience you're doing. World edition, if you wanted to find out more about Japan. Here's the Culturegram about Japan. Greetings and customs, language, appearance, government and economy, holidays, things like that. On the right-hand side, you'll see there's a photo gallery and slideshows. There's also recipes for the country, and then basic information here in the middle. You can also access the kids version here from the World Edition, and there's the kids version in Culturegrams. To go along with that, you might want to look at the languages and take a look at Mango. Mango has a new platform. You can log in, create a login for yourself, or you can click on Quick Start just to take a look at what's available. Here on the right, you can see Browse All Courses. You'll see that there are foreign languages for English speakers, English courses for non-English speakers, and specialty courses. To see the full list, you just click on the number there. So let's go back to foreign languages for English speakers and select Japanese. You'll see that there's some Mango Conversations, and we have Mango Premiere now, and you'll see feature films using subtitles and learning and listening to the language. But let's start with the basic conversations. You'll see that there are conversational goals and grammar goals.
We'll be studying in this chapter.
こんにちは。いい天気ですね。
ええ、観光ですか? This course will adopt the conventional Romaji method to listen and repeat the following. こんにちは, which means good afternoon.
You'll notice that they do a lot of repetition, and if you hover your word over, you get pronunciation. And so you work through these flashcard kind of method and memory, practicing simple, practical conversations, and finding these cultural notes to go along with it. For more information about other cultures that is talked about in the books, Native Americans, Japanese Americans, Basques, and other topics that may come up, check out Britannica. There's Britannica Public Library and Britannica School. You might also check out some general journal article databases such as Masterfile and General OneFile. Another topic that's very prevalent in this book, of course, is the medical emergency. And on page 20, he talks about the injuries. One of the sources for that, here under our subject, Health and Medicine, is Medline Plus. And I'm going to type in burns. So here's some basic information about burns, and you can read more about it, different kinds of burns. And in the book, they talk about inhalation injury, so there's more information there. So if your discussions take on that avenue of thought, Medline Plus is going to be a good place to come for that. Under Health and Medicine and Nursing and Allied Health, you'll find some other resources for that. In the book, Walt quotes from A Christmas Carol. No space of regret can make amends for one life's opportunity misused. So if the discussion leads you to information and finding out more about A Christmas Carol, check out Novelist. The first place to look, up in the top left under Lists and Articles, there's a link to book discussion guides. And you'll see that Christmas Carol is included in that. In this discussion guide, you'll see information about the author, a summary of the book, some book discussion questions, including about the Dickens writing style, and some further reading there at the bottom. There's also a link into Novelist for A Christmas Carol. You'll see that when you're in a specific record, it gives you information about the book, some reviews, a link to see if it's available in your library in Wildcat. Some other things in Novelist, this Reader's Advisory database. I'm going to type in Japanese American and do a search to locate fiction books on this topic. On the left-hand side, you'll see that I can narrow my results. So I'm going to link on kids' books here and update my results. So here's a book, Fish for Jimmy, inspired by one family's experience in a Japanese American internment camp. If I click on that, again, I get information about the book. I get its reading level. There's my Check Wildcat. And if I scroll down to the bottom, you'll see there's search for more, find more books like this. So I could click on picture books, Japanese Americans and family, for example. Click on search. Now it will bring up the book I just had, but other books like it. Back on the main page, on the left-hand side, you'll see recommended read lists. Under historical fiction, there is a category for World War II. And there are suggested books. here in Novelist. And I can also search our author. And here's Craig Johnson books in Novelist. There's Spirit of Steamboat. If I go into Spirit of Steamboat, you'll also notice the series link here. So if this book has inspired people to get other Walt Longmire books, and they've gotten interested in reading the series, I can click on this series and it brings up his books. Notice that I can sort those books. So if they wanted the books in order, I can sort by oldest or newest and get a list of the books. Another source when discussing this book might be Wyoming Places. This lets you look at spots mentioned in the book, spots along the flight path. On the right-hand side, I'm going to click on the map. You'll see that at the top there's a search box. So let's take a look at that fictional county. And here we go. The Absarokas. I can click on the link here and it gives me information about it. So this fictional county in his book has a place in Wyoming history. In 1939, some Sheridan residents wanted to secede from Wyoming and create the 49th state of Absaroka. We can also link to find it on a map, but let's look at some of our other sites. For example, Heart Mountain. And notice I have Heart Mountain Relocation Center and Heart Mountain in Park County. I'm going to click on Heart Mountain Relocation Center. I get some basic information. I can find it on the map. I can zoom in. If I hold my cursor over the red point for Heart Mountain, you'll see that I get some additional links, including one called Colors of Confinement, and that links me to another resource to add to our discussion, and that's these beautiful pictures . What a great addition to a discussion about the Japanese Americans and World War II. If you wanted to follow along the route, for example, we could go and look at, he mentions Pumpkin Buttes. So there's Pumpkin Buttes on the map as they're flying from Sheridan heading down to Denver. I can also put in other land features, so there's things he talks about, Pumpkin Buttes, Laramie Peak, and I can put those in. Well, they don't seem to be loading there, but it lets me follow that route, follow the buttes, follow the landmarks for that flight. So that's just a quick look at some of our resources that we have for topics that may come up in the book discussion of Spirit of Steamboat. At the bottom of this resource guide, you'll see there's some other guides, one for U.S. history and one for primary sources, where you'll find links like the Library of Congress primary source sets, which has some great information and activities, lesson plans, for example, on internment camps. There's also some links about the plane itself and the Longmire on A&E TV. We'd love to hear about what's happening in your community for One Book Wyoming, Spirit of Steamboat. If you'll contact us here at the State Library, that'd be great, and we'll add that to that. We'd also like to know what sorts of things that you're doing in your library, as well as what sort of topics come up in your discussions, so that we can add that to this particular list. Thanks for joining in today, and enjoy the book.